I'm Bess.
And I'm Raphael.
And we are Two Peas in the Kitchen.
In today's video, we're going to show you how to make easy home-style buttermilk biscuits.
As always, we will share time-saving tips and tricks to help home cooks make easy, elegant eats.
If this sounds like exactly what you need, click on the watermark in the lower right-hand corner of the video for a free subscription to our channel. That way, you won't miss any of our delicious recipes and easy-peasy tips.
Okay, so everybody is not going to believe how easy it is to make these delicious home-style buttermilk biscuits. The first thing that I just want to talk about is whenever we're baking, we particularly like to weigh our dry ingredients if you have a kitchen scale. If you don't, I'm going to give you the measurements in the cup version, not in the weight version, but I have weighed these out. We're going to start with 500 grams of all-purpose flour, but that is also about 4 cups. So if you don't have a scale, it's 4 cups of flour. The reason that we like to weigh our flour is that it really is the most consistent way to make sure that you have the right amount of flour. Because biscuits are predominantly flour, it's even more important that you have the right amount. But if you don't have a scale, it's 4 cups of flour. Here we have 2 tablespoons regular cane sugar. I've just put in 2 tablespoons of baking powder. And one of the things that's very important about the baking powder, particularly in these biscuits, because we're going for fluffy biscuits here, is that your baking powder cannot be expired. Please check the expiration date on your baking powder. If you have any question about whether your baking powder is viable, here's a little tip. You can take a teaspoon of baking powder and you can toss that right into a little pot of boiling water. And if it gets really fizzy, then you know your baking powder is viable. If you don't get any reaction, there's no fizz from the baking powder, then we would highly suggest that you get a new can of baking powder and start over, because these biscuits will not have the same texture if the baking powder is not viable. And our last dry ingredient here is going to be 2 teaspoons of salt. That's not kosher salt, that's just fine table salt. So then I'm just going to take a fork and I'm just going to quickly mix together the dry ingredients for these easy home-style biscuits.
So now we're going to get ready to add our cold butter. And the reason we want to start with cold butter, and we typically freeze our butter for 20 to 30 minutes before we work with it, is because you want chunks of butter when you place your biscuits in the oven. And the reason you want chunks of butter is because the butter is going to start to melt in the oven and release steam, and you'll get nice flaky biscuits. Now it's time to add our butter, and it's nice and cold. And then we're going to actually use our grater. This is one of our easy peasy tips, so that you don't have to use a pastry cutter. So this is 1.5 sticks of butter. We use the shorter, fatter butter here, but it's going to be 12 tablespoons of butter or 170 grams. So this is nice and cold. I'm going to take each half here, and I'm just going to use this cheese grater with the large holes. You don't want to use the tiny holes here. You want to use the large holes that you would normally use to grate, something like mozzarella cheese. So you're going to grate all of the butter this way, and you don't have to work with the pastry cutter and cut it into your flour, and then you get left with these nice little shavings of cold butter. So I'm going to go ahead and do all of the butter this way, and then I'll show you how to incorporate it into the flour. So now we have our beautifully cold grated butter, and it's already, a perfect size. Again, no pastry cutter, so I'm just going to dump this into my bowl of flour, and I'm going to use this fork to incorporate the butter into the flour. Okay, next we're going to add our liquids, and in this case it's 1.5 cups or 355 grams of buttermilk. You can also use whole milk if you'd like, but we think they're more delicious if you use buttermilk. So we're going to go ahead and add these to the bowl of dry ingredients, and then I'm just going to mix it up with this same fork, and then we'll proceed to roll them out. And I'm just going to keep mixing until all of the dry flour is incorporated. You don't want to overmix your biscuits. Anytime you're making biscuits and scones, it's important not to overmix because you want that lighter, flakier texture. You don't want to melt your butter. That's the important thing. And that's it. I mean, it looks nice and shaggy, all the flour's incorporated, and now we can start to roll it out and form our biscuits.
Okay, so now we have this cohesive sort of ragged dough mass, and we are ready to get this out onto our pastry board. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna just lightly flour our board here. If you don't have a pastry board, you can just do this on a cutting board, or you can even just do this right on your counter, a clean counter, obviously. So this is the fun part where we're gonna need to roll this out. So I usually will do that. And it's definitely not kneading it the way that you would knead bread dough or something where you can be a little bit more rough with the dough, but you do need to get it a little bit packed together into a ball. I usually just try to do that by gently pressing it. So now we're just going to use our hands to sort of gently press that into a flat circle. I'm going to use a rolling pin here because, as I keep mentioning, we really do not want our butter to get too hot. I'm using, as you will see, a marble rolling pin. As with pies or a lot of other pastries, you will see that it's often recommended to use a marble rolling pin because marble tends to stay cool. And that, again, goes to our point that we really want to be careful with the frozen pieces of butter in our dough and keeping those nice and cold. So what we're trying to do here is just gently with our marble rolling pin, and this is a great rolling pin. We're going to link this in our blog post if you're interested in it. It really does help. We're going to get that till it's about an inch thick. Just kind of tack the edges up. Stick this right here. And now our dough is ready to cut into biscuits. One of our easy peasy tips, and probably the best part about making biscuits from scratch and not the junky ones from a can, is that this biscuit dough, which we're going to cut and we're going to form into its shape on this sheet pan over here, these can be made ahead and put in the freezer. And the best part about that easy peasy tip is not only can it be done, but they are actually much more delicious after they've been frozen. So there is no need ever again to buy the biscuits that come in the twisty cans, because you can just have baggies of biscuits in your freezer ready to go. After you've put this into its circle here, you can use really any size biscuit cutter that you like. You can make little baby biscuits, or you can even make bigger ones. We've decided to go with a 2 1/4 inch size, and we will also link these. This is a great set. They come in all different sizes. And you're just going to very carefully cut the biscuits with the biscuit cutter, and then we're going to place these onto a sheet pan that I've lined with parchment paper. After we've cut these biscuits, they are going to go into the freezer, and we're going to flash freeze them. Some of the biscuits we're making today are actually going to go right into a baggie, and we're going to store them to use for a future date. And then some of the biscuits that we're making today, we're going to flash freeze because they really are better after they've been frozen for about 20 minutes. And then we're going to bake them because we are hosting a brunch and we're going to use them for our brunch. So it's really up to you. You can make a double or triple batch of these biscuits and use some or freeze some, whatever you want to do. It's a very versatile option, but you can see just how easy it is to just cut these and lie them out neatly on this sheet pan. Okay, with this 2 1/4 inch cutter, I was able to easily cut 13 biscuits, but you can see here I have this is like valuable, like gold, this biscuit dough. I would never waste it. So I'm being very gentle with my buttery biscuit dough here. We don't want that butter to melt any more than it has to. While I'm working with it, I'm just going to make another ball. I'm going to probably need a little bit more flour here. And I'm just going to go back to the beginning there And then these are going to go into the freezer to flash freeze.
Okay, now we're going to flash freeze our biscuits right on the cookie sheet. No need to cover them for 20 to 30 minutes to get them nice and cold, and then we'll proceed on with the rest of the baking. Okay, now that we flash frozen our biscuits, I'm going to bake some of them and reserve some for later. So I've placed about a dozen biscuits here right on a cookie sheet on unbleached parchment paper, and I'm going to stick them in a preheated oven, 425 degrees Fahrenheit, for about 12 minutes until the biscuits get nice and golden brown on top. I also like to check the bottom to make sure that they don't burn. And then I've reserved, there's 4 more here that I just placed in a freezer baggie. And the reason we flash froze them was because now we're able to stack them in this baggie and they're not going to stick. That way you can take them out anytime you want fresh biscuits and throw them in the oven again. Our favorite part,
it's time
right?
to taste our biscuits. It's the very best part of every video.
These just came out of the oven, nice and fresh. Take a look at the height.
You can see that little airy bubbles inside where our butter melted.
The nooks and crannies.
We've decided to use a little honey when we're tasting our biscuits today, or we may just eat them plain.
I'm going to do this.
Look at the steam coming out of them. Oh. They're beautiful. So one of the things that we really do like to focus on is that it's really easy, once you sort of learn some tricks, to make certain things at home that everybody loves to eat that are particularly terrible for you when you buy them in the grocery store. And the biscuits that come in the tube that you crack open with your spoon
all sorts
are
of junk.
Really awful for you. These are so easy to make, and as we mentioned in the video, we're going to take a break here.
Cheers.
Cheers. Our a little biscuit toast.
Oh my God.
Oh, they're perfect. They're
There's
so much
nothing
better
better
than the junky ones. But the tip we talked about on a rainy day, you can just whip up 20 biscuits, cook a couple and eat them to make you smile, and put the rest of them in the freezer and just pop those out any morning your kids just need a little pick-me-up, or you want to pop an egg on them, or use them when company's over. They're such a great thing to keep in the freezer. They freeze so well. And I really honestly think they're better after you've frozen them for a while.
Absolutely. They'll rise more. We talked about the importance of the cold butter.
They're really perfect. This is a great recipe. My family comes from the South, so I feel like I know my way around biscuits. And these are just delicious, and we really hope that you will enjoy them as much as we do.
We hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you've tried making this recipe for our easy home-style buttermilk biscuits, make sure you leave us a comment down below to let us know what you think. The link to the blog post is also included in the description below for reference.
And also, please join our pod and subscribe to our free channel by clicking on the watermark that you will find on the screen below. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Bye for now.
Bye.